In a previous video, we looked briefly at a Lakota prophecy about charcoal and ash falling from the sky and how that relates to the Daniel prophecy about a stone hitting the earth. If you haven't seen that video yet, the link is below. But basically, both the Sioux prophecy and the Daniel prophecy point to the same event and the same time period. They are pointing to an asteroid hitting the Earth, and they are pointing to this year. More specifically, the Sioux tribe's black snake prophecy indicates the world will end when the black snake goes under the water. The Sioux believe the black snake is the Dakota Access Pipeline, and this pipeline is expected to begin shipping oil on June 1st, 2017. At the same time this Sioux prophecy is being fulfilled, there are at least 5 other significant Bible prophecies reaching culmination. As you know, a significant 1260-year period just ended in 2016. That time period is explained in Matthew 24 and Revelation 12. It says the stars will fall and the bride will escape immediately after it ends. We can't know the exact date that it began. We're only given the clues which indicate it coincides with the rising of the Holy Roman Empire. Thomas Newton wrote in 1776 that the 1260 years began in 756, which ended in 2016. Adam Clarke agreed with this in 1825. However, an earlier author, Robert Fleming, wrote in 1701 that the 1260 years started in 758, which would end in 2018. So whether the 1260 years end in 2016 or 2018, it's clear that we are in the window for that prophesied event now, which again is the falling of the stars, the fire and brimstone raining down from the sky. Next, we have the 400 years of affliction described in Deuteronomy 28 through 30, in which some of the Israelites are taken to the nation their fathers did not know, across the sea to a nation that is swift as the eagle, and there will suffer affliction for 400 years. Again, we cannot know the exact date that affliction began, but all indications are that it was around 1620 when the slave ships began arriving in America. 400 years from that end in 2020, but we're told there is a final time of trouble that lasts 3.5 years after the asteroid hits. And we're told 2 out of 3 will go through that 3.5 years. That means the escape of the bride and the asteroid must occur 3.5 years before the end of the affliction. 2020 is a highly probable year representing that end, and 3.5 years before that is 2017. Again, that also represents a window of possibilities because we're not given an exact specific event, only the general idea. Third, we're given a slightly more specific prophecy in Jeremiah 25, which tells us that Babylon will be destroyed after 70 years have been accomplished of the nations around Jerusalem serving the king of Babylon. This is another riddle that must be solved. Jeremiah 51:42 tells us Babylon will be destroyed by the waves, and Revelation 18:21 tells us a stone from heaven will hit the sea, and that is what will destroy Babylon. Jeremiah 25:33 says the slain will lie over the whole earth when Babylon falls. Jeremiah 25:10 and Revelation 18:23 both say the bride and bridegroom will escape at that time, and it will happen at the harvest. Jeremiah 50:16 and Revelation 14:16 and 18. So the 70-year Jeremiah prophecy refers to Babylon the Great, which Revelation 17:11 tells us sits on the 8th king. The 8th king is the United Nations, which rose up in October 1945. So the king of Babylon in Jeremiah 25:12 is the 8th king, the United Nations. We've already gone through the Revelation 17 riddle in other videos. There's no question that the UN is the 8th king and the king of Babylon. The only question is, when did the nations around Jerusalem begin to serve the UN. The nations around Jerusalem may refer to the State of Israel, which was established by the UN in November 1947. That could mean that the 70 years will end in November 2017. However, the area where Israel was established was actually turned over to the United Nations in January and February 1947. So we are, right now, within a window of time that could represent the end of 70 years. The window opened in October 2015 and will be a high watch until May of 2018. The reason being that the going forth of the commandment, as described in Daniel 9:25, can refer to either the UN vote in November 1947 or the actual declaration of the State of Israel in May of 1948. In other words, the fall of Babylon could occur any time in the next year. But next, Jesus said the stars will fall before one generation has passed from the budding of the fig tree. Hosea 9:10 tells us the fig tree is Israel, and Jesus said the fig tree will sprout forth leaves in the spring. The country of Israel was officially declared in the spring of 1948, and Psalm 90:10 tells us one generation can be equal to 70 years. That means it's highly possible that Jesus was telling us that the stars will fall before May of 2018. The next prophecy lining up right now is the Daniel 9 prophecy, which is slightly different from the Jeremiah prophecy. In Daniel 9, the 70 Shabuah are not necessarily years. They can represent 70 Feasts of Weeks, which is basically 70 years because the Feast of Weeks occurs once per year. But they can also represent 77. In other words, 77 years. But Daniel 9:25 does not start when Jeremiah 25 starts, and it does not end when Jeremiah 25 ends. The Daniel 9 prophecy starts when the commandment goes forth to restore Jerusalem, very specifically November 1947 or May 1948. But the Daniel 9 prophecy ends at the complete end of sins, which cannot occur until after Armageddon. In Jeremiah, the 70 years start when the nations around Jerusalem begin to serve the king of Babylon, and the 70 years end when Babylon falls, when the millstone hits the sea, which starts the final 3.5 years of trouble. So as we've discussed before, the Jeremiah prophecy is slightly different from the Daniel 9 prophecy, but they fit together. They're complementary. They do not start and end at the exact same times, but they do involve the same general events: the creation of the country of Israel and the serving of the king of Babylon by those nations around Jerusalem. In Daniel 9, the man who Babylon named Messiah was cut off, so to speak, between November and January 2017, when the prince that shall come took office. The prophecy in Daniel 9 says the prince will confirm a covenant, and we discovered early in Obama's presidency that the covenant refers to the worldwide peace treaty created by the United Nations. We don't know that the prince is Trump. It could be Vice President Pence, or it could be Senior Advisor Kushner. But the prophecy does say that the prince who confirms the covenant will come after the man called Messiah, which was Obama. So that seems clear that it refers to someone in the present administration. It says that person will confirm the covenant, and the specific covenant is the worldwide peace covenant with the 8th king, which Daniel 8 tells us will destroy by peace. Daniel 9 says he will confirm the covenant starting a 7-year period, and in the midst of that 7 years, the desolation will be complete. But notice the original language does not say that the prince will destroy the city. No matter which translation concordance you look at, it does not say that. Nowhere does the word he actually show up in that verse. If we read only the actual words from the original Hebrew language, it would read like this: strong covenant, many, 1-7, half 7 cease, sacrifice, tribute, extremity, detested thing, desolated, desolated, even completion, cut, pour forth, desolated. But you can see that nowhere in this verse does the word he show up. So it's not saying that the prince will cause the desolation. Clearly, when we compare the verse to the rest of the prophecies, we can see that the desolation is the asteroid impact. It says the desolation will be complete after 3.5 years, which perfectly matches the timeline. The beast rises to power at the asteroid and continues for 3.5 years. So it takes 3.5 years for the beast to die. So it's telling us the end of sins will occur 77 years after the going forth of the commandment to restore Jerusalem. In other words, 77 years after November 1947 or May of 1948. There will be 7, 7, and 62 Shavuots until the man called Messiah, 7 and 7 until Obama was born, and 62 until his first year as president. Then after 62, he will either cut a covenant or be cut off. He did confirm the covenant after the 62 Shavuots, and that covenant did last for exactly 7 years. And he was cut off exactly at the end of that 7 years. Then let's look at verse 26, but only look at the actual original words in the text. It says, following 62 Shabuah, Messiah cut off, not people. Leader come in, perhaps to go to ruin. City sacredness end. Flood, end. Battle, desolated, cut. Then again, verse 27, strong covenant, many, 1-7, half 7 cease, sacrifice, tribute, extremity, detested thing, desolated, desolated, even completion, cut, pour forth, desolated. It's telling us the leader after Messiah will go into ruin. In other words, this leader is the final leader. The sacredness of the city will end. A flood will occur. In other words, the millstone will hit the sea. There will be a battle. In other words, the battle of Armageddon. The covenant with many for 1-7 will cease halfway through the 7. In other words, the covenant will cease after 3.5 years. There will be sacrifice. It will be extreme. Desolation, desolation, completion. The true message is in the original language, not in the King James translation or any other translation. The doctrines that Christians hold on to are part of the strong delusion. Gabriel told Daniel the prophecy will not be understood until the end. The Christians are following doctrines that go back hundreds of years. So according to Gabriel, they can't be right. 2017 is the end of 1260 years. It's the end of 70 years. It is before the end of one generation. It is 3.5 years before the end of the affliction. It is 3.5 years before the completion of desolation. And it is 7 years before the end of sins. But not only that, within 2017, there are highlights. Obviously, the appointed times in the Bible are always watches, but specifically with regards to the fall of Babylon, the harvest is of concern. The harvest occurs twice per year, once in the northern hemisphere and once in the southern hemisphere. It generally occurs at the end of summer through the fall season. The southern hemisphere is currently in their fall season. But the appointed time of Shavuot is also considered the harvest, specifically the wheat harvest. And in the northern hemisphere, the wheat harvest will occur on the window of June 28th through the 30th. That is the appointed time of Shavuot. So we're not only at the end of the 70 years, we're also in the time of the harvest right now. We also know that Noah's 40 days of rain ties into all of this. We're told in Luke 17:29 and 30, it says it will rain fire and brimstone from the sky when this event happens, when Babylon falls, when the Son of Man is revealed, and when the rescue occurs. Verse 26 tells us that the rain of fire and brimstone is associated also with Noah. In other words, it's associated with the flood. It's associated with the 40 days of rain. The 40 days of rain are very specific in the Bible, but the dates are given for the ancient calendar, not the Roman calendar. The sign in heaven, described in Revelation 12, appeared on the ancient calendar appointed time of trumpets, which also means appointed sign of trumpets, in 2012. And following that same biblical method, Noah's reign in 2017 for the Northern Hemisphere will start on the window of June 10th through the 12th and last until the window of July 20th through the 23rd. That is right after the 24th day of the 9th month in the Southern Hemisphere, Haggai 2:18 through 23, and that is right before the start of the 10th month in the Southern Hemisphere, Esther 2:16. So we are now entering a very high watch within a larger high watch. And this is also lining up with the mystery of the stump in Daniel 4, which connects to the Sioux prophecy of the black snake, whose coming is a harbinger of the end of the world, which will involve the falling of charcoal and ash from the sky. This happening in the same window that marks the end of 70 years of the nations around Jerusalem serving Babylon. So for more information, you can see the links here. Again, thank you so much to those who are making this work possible. I hope you're doing well, and I'll talk to you next week.